You're listening to Barbell Logic,
the podcast where we talk about what it means to experience strength
and how you can use simple, hard, and effective strategies in training and nutrition to improve your life.
It starts with meeting you where you are right now and finding lasting solutions.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm your host, Niki Sims, and I have two co-hosts with me. I have Matt Reynolds and I have Andrew Jackson.
Howdy, howdy.
What's up, guys?
Great to have you guys here. Welcome to 2024 and welcome back to the Blockies. Andrew.
And welcome back to the United States, Matt Reynolds.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You survived.
We had a great trip in Mexico. I can't wait to tell you guys about kind of, Niki, you're telling your story last week about your favorite experience. It was the greatest resort we've ever been to. We did get stuck in Mexico overnight. Didn't make it home, but nobody cares about that story. We travel down there all the time. So every once in a while, when you have one of those weird days where your flight's delayed 7 hours and they cancel it and they put you in a roach motel, and it's fine. I mean, what are you going to do?
This was United?
It was United. I filed because I paid for everything really with points. So I'm hoping I can get my points back. I'm not really trying to. I will say this, I got insurance for a room in Houston. We thought we were going to get stuck in Houston overnight. Booked a room at the Houston Marriott, which was not cheap, especially because of all the flight delays. And then we didn't make it to Houston, and I paid for the insurance. And the insurance said, your claim has been approved, and they're paying me 12% of the cost of the room instead of the cost of the room.
What a deal.
I was like, is that how this works?
This is a classic insurance situation. That's been my experience with it, pretty much all insurances.
Yeah, I'll never file insurance again. I think I'll just file a chargeback on my credit card, I guess.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Terrible.
Anyway, excited to cast some vision today for 2024 finally.
Here we go. Let's see if I can redeem myself as Blockies host after, well, I got a lot of positive feedback about our Blockies, so I think they were good.
Yeah, it's been fun.
But in terms of an MC, I definitely didn't manage the clock well, so see if I can redeem myself on this one.
Shot clock is on.
Much shorter list, though, and I think we can jump right into it. First is a go back to the business section from looking back at 2023. And my intention there was, we talked about setbacks, but I wanted to flip that into opportunities. So what, looking into 2024, might have been setbacks in 2023 that we see as opportunities in 24, or could just be what opportunities are we excited about as we're jumping into the beginning of the year and looking at the next 12 months.
I think the thing that we talked about a little bit about setback, which I don't know that I'd still consider it a setback, is that I feel like we're right on the cusp of crossing the chasm with Turnkey Coach. And so I'm super excited about that. As a matter of fact, I was going back and looking through that book again. We read that book several years ago, but Andrew, I think it'd be a great book to read, The Crossing the Chasm. So I'm super excited for that opportunity to make Turnkey Coach a household name in the online coaching industry. And so I think that is not a surety, but it's going to take a bunch of work, but I'm really excited about where it's going. And then the other stuff is just some of the really big kind of marketing stuff that we haven't been able to do in the past. We were able to increase our marketing and advertising budget a bit. Niki and I are going to be on 2 TV shows coming up. We film in March, and both those shows should come out in kind of May, June. One is Viewpoint on PBS with Dennis Quaid, who Niki has a crush on, even though he's like 74.
He's 69. I Googled it.
The other is Balancing Act on Lifetime, which is also a kind of a educational show with Montel Williams. So not the talk show, but an actual. And so we're going to be on both that Lifetime show and PBS. I'm excited about those shows. And then I think I've mentioned this, but haven't gone into deep detail of actively doing a ton of work right now with the Forbes book. So we signed the deal with Forbes for my book, Undoing Urgency, Leveraging Minimum Effective Dose for Maximum Impact in Health, Business, and Life. So this minimum effective dose book that people have asked for years, and it will have a lot of focus on strength and how we came up with those Scott and I came up with those ideas and major principles and minimum effective dose values and the way it worked kind of in the trenches with strength training. And then we just started to notice that it also carries over really well to the way we run the business and the way I look at life, and applying those same things to life and business as well as strength and health. So that will be the focus. I'm super excited about all of those things coming up for the year, and as well as very hopeful for landing some new government contracts this year. So I think those are going to be in the pipeline. Don't want to count my chickens before they're hatched, but those are all big pieces of the company that I'm super excited about for 2024.
Niki, what are you excited about?
I am excited because I think we are going to be getting in front of more people. I think our audience is going to be increasing, like Matt was just saying about the TV episodes coming out. And we have some more hires that we're going to be making. One is coming out for the social media coordinator. And while I think our team is incredible, it's a wonderful thing when you can hire someone to do something that they're really, really good at, that we've been kind of doing our best. There are a couple different hires in that arena. So I know that's going to have a good effect on what everybody is able to do, meaning they'll be able to focus on what they're really good at and what they're passionate about. So I think that's going to increase our output in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that passion's such a huge deal. I was talking to my brother about this, and about we're making some HR hires, and you do such a great job at HR, and the CX team does, but you get to that spot where you're like, I don't really like doing HR. We're good at it. We're fine. And my brother was like, there is someone out there that is their favorite thing in the world, is they want to do HR. And I'm like, I don't know what kind of sociopath wants that. By the way, I'm not calling my future hire a sociopath.
Actually.
But
There's actually someone on our team who even reached out to me that they're like, that sounds great. And I was like, what?
I want to do all that, all the HR stuff. I'm like, perfect. Then let's hire somebody that's passionate and about it and great at it. So yeah, I'm excited for those hires as well.
Because like that's the work when I do it. It's necessary. I want to do it well, but it really makes me grouchy.
Yeah.
And so it impacts my other work.
Yeah,
but it's such a value. It's so important. And there's so much great work that can be done there. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the client success specialist we've just hired for TKC. Like when I look at TKC, I see so many opportunities for improvement and for improving the coach's life through that software and through that method. But my disposition is to look at it and be completely overwhelmed with all the things to be done. So I'm excited to prioritize and make investments in the best way that help the coaches the most and work with the team on what those might be without letting myself get overwhelmed by it. And then for Barbell Logic, I have a feeling we're going to be doing some more community kind of investment, community time, community in person, maybe. Got to be careful with the I word, but with the purchase of USSF and just what I'm hearing from our clients, I think that's the space we're gonna go a little bit more.
Awesome. I love it. Andrew, not to telegraph an answer, but we're able to make some hires for you to get you some support over the last couple of weeks. Niki mentioned the customer service specialist specifically for TKC, as well as made a cool hire as a executive assistant on the TKC sales role. So what are you looking most forward to in 2024?
I think delivering our vision. We create connections for the world to experience a life improved by strength. And I think that one of the things I love most about working in this company, and I can remember, I've probably mentioned it a half dozen times on the podcast before, but I can remember back to our very first time that you called me in 2016 and pitched this idea, and that you had a clear mission and vision and core values. And I've worked at a lot of companies that have all those things, but this is the first one I've worked at where I can always tie my work back to those things, and it's real.
Yeah.
They're not just posters on the wall that people kind of roll their eyes at. It's that we have a certain amount of pressure, I would call it. Feels like it's built up in the business. All of these quality products and services that we've been working on for years, that it just feels like there's this tipping point, like crossing the chasm, to use your words from earlier, that it feels like this is the year for some reason. Maybe it won't be, maybe it's the year after, but that pressure feels like it's there.
Yep.
And we'll never be done. There's also a part of my voice that says, well, that must mean that the product's not good enough yet. But man, we have all the pieces in place. We have all the players in place. And there's some kind of moment that I feel like needs to happen. That's what I think, that we've been working so much in alignment with our mission and our vision that this feels like the year for that to really tip over.
Yeah, I'm really proud that we've really stayed focused on that same mission and vision since that day I called you. I can remember I don't remember a lot of the phone calls I made to that initial group of coaches. I've joked with Niki about when I pitched it to her in person, but I remember walking into this really crappy
taco shop
Mexican restaurant. I was at Mexican Villa in this parking lot when I called you, and I was going in to eat tacos, and I said, "Hey, good news. You were alternate number one, and we had one person decided not to do it." And God, I look back and I think this guy's going to be my COO and project manager for just thinking about and same thing for Niki when I was kind of pitching the idea to her, and not just for you guys, but other members of the leadership team, Niki Berman, and so Lynn, of course, Josh, who was working as a contractor for us. He had his own business and now he's mission control, and, Dan and they've just CJ. It's amazing. If you could have looked forward 8 years, not actually in our 9th year, which is amazing, and look forward and think about where some of those people would be nearly a decade later is really cool. So, and really that's, I think, a dedication, not just to my vision and, casting those core values, but because the leadership team is so great and the team has been so great about getting behind those. And so I think we're all very focused on doing the same thing and working towards the same goal.
Coming again from the corporate world where that was really common, like I said, to have that stuff on the wall, the biggest difference is that I've never had a situation in my previous roles where we had a decision to make, or we had a situation where it wasn't clear what to do. And never before have I seen the leadership team go, well, okay, let's go back and look at our core values, our mission, our vision, and then make the decision and actually change our actions to make sure that they're aligned with that. And we do that all the time.
All the time.
And not only that, it often overturns what we want to do.
That's right.
Like, we're all sitting around the room saying, well, this is what we want to do. And they're like, wait a minute, pause.
Yeah.
No, that's not the right thing to do. And then we go do the thing that might not necessarily hit the bottom line the best way. It might not be what our reaction is to the moment, but we intentionally and consciously take the action that's more in alignment with our core values, mission, and vision. And that's why I think it's real.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there have been multiple times where we could have taken a path where it was kind of something mass produced, maybe stuff that someone's already doing that is repeatable and high profit, but low value. And I like that we always choose value in a way that leads to someone living a better life in the form of being able to take more charge over their health or take more charge over their career through coaching, which we have all found both of those things make our lives so much better. And I love how that drives our decisions.
Same with TKC. There's a part of me that's like, wow, we're giving away the business model in a sense. We're giving away all the operational solutions that we've developed over almost a decade of doing this online. We're coaching other people how to do what we do. It feels like the right thing to do because we're getting more strength coaches connecting with more clients that probably would never find or sign up for Barbell Logic.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's grow the whole pie instead of trying to take a bigger piece of the pie. And it's just, it makes perfect sense for sure.
And it's encouragement for Barbell Logic to get better and better. What are the increases in value that we're going to create?
Jumping back to the questions, those are a good round one. This is maybe a little bit different. Do you have anything concrete things you're expecting for the business?
I think that as we talked about some of the setbacks, Barbell Logic online coaching didn't grow as much as we wanted it to last year, the actual B2C business. I think those being featured on the TV shows and we do a really good job at driving people down the funnel once they know who we are. And I think this is going to expose us to millions and millions of more people who will learn who we are. And really, again, that the value of helping people experience strength to improve their quality of life, which I do hear more and more people talking that way, but have been on the cutting edge of that since the beginning. And so I think it will resonate well. So I'm super excited to have some predictions there. I think Barbell Logic online coaching is probably going to have some slow growth in the first 2 quarters, but I think in Q3 and Q4 will just crush. I think TKC is going to have a slow first quarter and then is going to crush starting Q2. We had our first $1 million quarter in Q4 of this past year. I am certain that we will have our first $2 million quarter in 2024 and that we'll achieve 10 million in ARR. So, now we're going to move into the 8-digit ARR, which is really cool. So I feel super confident about all those things. I feel confident that we'll land another government contract. We'll continue to find product market fit there. And man, I've got some super exciting things to talk to you guys about when we meet here in a couple weeks in person about the Academy that I don't want to share on the podcast, but just some brainstorming sessions. One of the things I love the most about when we meet in person is it gives us an opportunity to not be on a kind of a hard schedule of Zoom meetings where we got an hour and a half to do a meeting. And we can actually just do some brainstorming and just thinking through some stuff in Mexico. And like I do when I'm on vacation and I've got some of that bandwidth in my brain about the Academy and some fun places that I think it could go that I like to pitch to you guys and Josh and CJ. And I don't think it's a major deviation from what we're doing, but so I'm excited. Really, all four of those major product priorities that we have, I'm super excited about where they're going in 24.
Niki, any predictions different than opportunity?
Specific to the business?
Predictions for the business.
I do agree that we are going to start having some pretty noticeable momentum with TKC. And I think that's going to roll over into how people are being coached online. And so I think their experience is going to continue to improve on the end user domain. And I do also see that there is going to be a lot more interest in strength coaching. I think it's increased every year. But with how big the topic is around lifting for an improved quality of life in huge media sources, it's becoming a very almost commonplace theme, which means people are going to start trying to ask more questions about how can I do that for myself, which is great. I think the learning that's going to occur is that it's not something that you do for a weekend. It's something that you do for years. The opportunity and our responsibility is to help people be able to do that for years through any life phase that they're going through. And what I see in our coaches is their ability to continue to become more than just a low bar back squat technician. They are working with a human across a long amount of time. And you have to be able to navigate injuries. You have to be good at things like preparing for children and becoming a new parent and dealing with an injury, dealing with that life stress that people in their 40s start to experience where their children need a lot from them and so do their parents. And they start to really want to invest in themselves in a way that prepares them for that phase. So I think our coaches are going to become more, I guess, highly skilled in helping the human element. And I think that's going to be huge.
I'm excited. I spent some time on the plane and some in Mexico as well. I think this is where I am in my own training right now. And I don't know, we'll get to physical, but how this applies to the business is that as we've continued to promote experiencing strength for quality of life and health improvements and all those sort of things, I'm seeing more and more people who everybody wants to get stronger. Yes, we want to hit PRs, but these other things are very important as well. So, hypertrophy, body composition, health metrics, conditioning, things like that. And so I've been working on, in past years, I've developed a couple pretty important, I think, programs for the business that we've used for years. Something like the BLOC program, which is not Barbell Logic Online Coaching, but is actually like the Eastern Block program or daily undulating periodization or my version of the 531. And I'm really working on a kind of a hybrid program that is a combination of strength, like kind of low volume strength with the main lifts, with then a real focus on hypertrophy, accessory movements, and conditioning, just kind of an all-inclusive. And of course, we're not cookie cutter template sort of people, but it's really based more in the principles of the program and then give some examples of how that might work. And so I'm going to start testing that out here in a week or two. And I've got 3 or 4 of my clients that I'm going to test that out, this kind of hybrid program, something that a lot of people might call like power building or something. It's not quite that because I think it contains a little more conditioning and fun conditioning. And again, it's all built around sustainability. It's not built around like constantly kind of grinding yourself into powder or chasing numbers. You get a combination of either keeping strength high or even hitting PRs at the strength level, really focusing on adding good hypertrophy, also continuing to improve your conditioning, cardiovascular health. And then, of course, we've made some big jumps. We should give a shout out to Brittany and the nutrition team. Our nutrition clients are up significantly this year. And I think that's an integral part of making sure that we are doing this to improve our quality of life and health. And so kind of a fun passion project for me right now to build this hybrid program that hopefully I'll get to test it out for a few weeks with my clients, then probably release it to our coaches and let some of them start to test it out with some of theirs. So kind of excited there.
I love how that sounds because it's very similar to how I'm in my training now. And it definitely scratches that itch of wanting to feel like you work hard, to look like you work hard, and then get to have fun with it, where it's that answer to when we hear clients say, I want to be faster. I want to be able to condition. I want to be better at cardio. And when you're in that kind of program where you have a strength element, you have a high rep resistance element, and then you have some conditioning, you feel like you can do anything. And it feels fantastic. So I'm really excited.
A lot of this comes from really even the title of you guys' podcast of Beast Over Burden. I don't want training to feel like a burden. I want training to feel fun and exciting and still be extremely effective. And so I've also focused on like the time element. I think most of our clients don't have more than an hour. So all of these workouts are an hour or less, 40 minutes, things like that. And so trying to just listen to our clients, hear their needs, and try to meet their needs where they are, I think will work well. I also think it will carry over well to military because these guys really want to be in good condition and we don't want them being beat up. And so I'm excited to move forward with some of that just as a passion project.
Yeah, not a ton of clients asking me to taper up to a lifetime 1RM.
Yeah, sure.
By X date, which is what most programs are kind of designed to do, to have some sort of a volume intensification and peaking phase.
Realization, yeah, peak, yep.
Yeah, maybe one client I have that is competing semi-regularly that we kind of use those, but otherwise it's more of wanting to be sustainable, like you said, while still demonstrating progress.
Yeah, of course.
We still use weight on the bar as a metric over a long period of time to show that the things we're doing are working, quote unquote. I think that's a great idea. I'm excited to see that template. It definitely seems like that will be more useful for a bigger range of clients.
Yeah.
All right. My prediction for 2024, I think you guys pretty much covered the ones that have been on my mind. I thought it was cool to hear your ARR prediction. I hadn't really translated it there, but I think looking back at 2024, when we do this next year, Blockies 2025, I think we're going to have another step function increase in our organization as a team. We've really gotten in the groove of the game plan over the last couple of years. And I think when we get together in January, we're going to be able to take that further. And then with some of the new hires that we're adding, it's going to force us to be, I think, even more structured and organized in not a bad way. I mean, I don't think it's going to be rigid or calcify the team because we're able to be very fluid in the size that we're at. But adding a position like a CFO, for example, is going to require us to be more financially kind of disciplined. And some of the things that I think we're going to need to prioritize this year around sales and marketing are going to force a little bit more discipline on that end. And then working with the dev team that we've got put together right now to kick off this year is going to force a little bit more structure. So I just think looking back at 2024, we're going to be in this sweet spot as a startup where we're becoming even more professionalized, more organized and structured, while still having the ability to change quickly or adapt to the circumstances. I think that's what's going to feel different by the end of next year with where we're at. And then also having more investors involved in a board, that's going to bring a lot more structure, professionalism to the team. So I'm excited.
Our investors are great investors. They have so much wisdom to share. So some of those guys will be on the board, but another group of those guys will be on an advisory board for us. We've never been the types of people who want to just say like, hey, we got it. We're not interested in your opinion. We've got these incredible people who have tremendous experience as operators and investors and board members. And I want to glean as much information from them as possible. So I think I would make a prediction too that, it's been mission control has been the four of us, the three of us plus Josh for a while. I would not be surprised at all by the time we do this next year if there aren't an additional one or two people on mission control and some of those major, I mean, a CFO is would be in that wheelhouse and, toss the idea around of a chief marketing, not CMO. I don't know that we'll go that route, but, I think that's down the road that's coming at some point. And so you start to expand the C-suite and you expand the leadership team, expand the staff, and that's kind of part of the deal. And so it'd be interesting to see what the team looks like a year from today, for sure.
All right. Moving into some more lifting specific out of the business realm and into predictions for coaching, lifting, or more broadly, fitness trends? Trying to give you a little bit of range there for things to pull from. So what are things that you see happening as a coaching profession, the lifting community, and or fitness as a market?
I think Niki nailed it so much so. I think it was the first episode we did about the standard of service that's really required at this point to be a successful online coaching business. And so I've even thought about having our producer, Steven, taking some of those kind of high points of these 3 podcasts and putting them together into sort of a vision audio piece that we could send to the investors or people that are interested in the business from a business perspective, because I think that's a big piece of who we are. The more I see, it's really important for us to train our TKC coaches to adopt that standard of service. I think you were telling me Jesse Meekum from YNAB, didn't he say it was the more important than the app or the software is the system?
The method.
Is that the term that he used? The method. We have a method of online coaching that's just essentially perfected, and one that we'll never be fully satisfied with. But understanding that level of service of 24-hour feedback and integrated screen recordings and talking to your clients, like building that relationship, not just popping in every once in a while and offering a sentence or two. I think that standard is really important. And so I'm excited to really help promote that across the fitness industry. I think that's a big deal. For me personally, I have spent a ton more time. I'd be interested if, Niki, if you've got a similar story because of more of a focus on hypertrophy and bodybuilding type stuff. Not that we're going to do bodybuilding shows, but that kind of hypertrophy stuff. I've gotten much more focused on coaching quality reps for accessory movements. So in the past, I really focused on technique of the main lifts. And then I'm just like, just check the box and get your accessories in. And I've really learned, that thing that most of my accessory movements at this point from a hypertrophy perspective have a very slow eccentric, like a 3-second eccentric, a big stretch in the bottom, a fast concentric, a contraction at the top, and just making sure the quality of those reps are there more than I think a lot of times when people think about hypertrophy, it's volume. It's like 12 reps, 15 reps. Like, I don't really care if it's 12 or 15 reps. I want quality reps. I want very controlled, very, focused as you are on your squat and keeping the bar over mid-foot and all those kind of major things that we do. I've really started to focus on that. I'm seeing I think there's a good ROI if you've never done that. When I've done stuff like dumbbell presses, I'm just knocking out dumbbell presses. That's what I've done for 25 years. And now to be very intentional about the quality of reps, I think that's been big for both me and for the way I'm coaching my clients right now. So those are mine.
Niki.
I think with fitness trends in the coaching world, maybe what I'd like to see, I'm thinking more about what I'd like to see, but I hope what will happen, especially based on our influence, is that a coach and client relationship becomes like a really long-term relationship. And I believe that's important because the impact of your training and what you need, while it's pretty similar, I think it does change a lot from year to year. And the investment that you make in terms of the time and relationship can really improve what you get out of it every year going forward. So the time you've spent with a coach for a year and what you've learned about yourself and what they've learned about you really well informs what you may need going forward because they understand where you've just been. And the efficacy of the training towards your goal that you're after, I think the more knowledge base you have on where you're coming from is extremely valuable. So what I hope to see in high value coaching is a long-term journey together where you're really observing what has worked for this person and what has not worked for this person. Because what we've learned being in business this long is that it's the right program and the right exercises for the person. It's not, I have this template and this format, let me see how many people I can apply it to for as long as they will tolerate it. It's much different than that. And I think people are feeling that too because more people are interested in strength training. So they want to figure out how they can keep doing that for longer and longer. So the need is going to be, how can I keep doing this as I change, as I become more advanced and more muscled? The more muscled someone is, it gets a little more complicated in terms of keeping them going and, navigating through kind of these peaks and valleys. And so it has to be like the trend that I think will be required is that the knowledge and ability to handle a long time lifter must increase. We're going to have like, there are the boomers, but we're going to have like really fit, people as we all age together. And what's that going to look like? I feel like strong boomers.
Yeah.
Or I guess that would be like the millennials. So that's what I see in terms of like the need of the strength industry and the fitness industry is like where having muscle and doing work is highly valued, even though you could just go get plastic surgery and, put on a butt. Like that's not good enough for a lot of people.
But then you got the little twig legs and you're like,
Yeah,
something doesn't look right.
Exactly.
So-
We were just talking about that this morning. You can fake
Yeah.
everything.
It's so weird.
The classic debate of like whether you're a butt guy or a chest guy or
Yeah.
whatever, or whether you're a trap lady. Like you can fake almost everything now except the legs. You can't fake the legs.
Yeah.
Or the
Yeah.
traps.
When the thighs don't match the butt, we got a problem. Everything
It's a
looks
little
weird.
Kim Kardashian-y.
Man, I constantly come back. Andrew, I think you nailed the last couple of years the concept of ability and integrity and benevolence to build trust and relationships with our clients, which leads to consistency and longevity. And if we could just get other coaches to really understand, to really buy into those things, like you have to really be one of the best in the world at your job. You've got to have tremendous integrity, which you have total control over. And you've got to actually care. And when you do those things, you build that trust and relationship with your clients. And when you build trust and relationship with your clients, they stay. And so I think that's, again, coming back to core values, that's the core values of how we serve our clients and serve them well. And the thing that really sets us apart, I think, in the online coaching world. And so I think it still comes back to those values.
Yeah, it's the support form programming dials that you have to get better and better at being the DJ of.
That's right.
Yeah, my answer would be sort of a hybrid of both of yours, using that ability, integrity, benevolence model. I think that the demand from the market, especially as we are trying to cross the chasm from niche power lifter kind of strength athlete, people that are totally bought into barbells, to a broader market, broader demographic, we still want to bring barbells to those people, but I think the trend is that there's more interest in a broader range of exercises, broader range of goals, wanting to learn how to incorporate strength training in a life that isn't geared towards competing X number of times a year. And even within the strength community, I think I'm seeing from social media and just conversations, what people are interested in is more on hypertrophy
Sure.
generically, and how to go about optimizing that. I think there's a lot of interesting debate going on right now. I think a lot of the things that have sort of been considered settled in the science, quote unquote, over the last 5 years or so about volume. I just posted a paper in Slack that I thought was some interesting scientific drama where one lab is kind of essentially...
Yeah, tell us about that.
So there was a paper that was released in December that essentially called out another lab by name and challenged the results that they were claiming. A lot of it was basically diving into the data and the results and pointing out that it didn't really justify the claims that, and predominantly the claim that hypertrophy increases linear with volume. So basically the storyline for the last 5-10 years has been that volume drives hypertrophy, is the predominant driver. And the results from the study in 2023 were basically showing that there are no difference in results between high volume and low volume. And even the ones that they did show or have relied on to make claims were not significant enough to make a claim that adding an increase in volume is directly related to increased hypertrophy. And what seems to be kind of emerging in conversation now is that it's more about the proximity to failure and the quality of the movement, kind of like what Matt was saying. So I think our coaches, my prediction going back to that point is that our coaches and the industry in general, in order to meet the demand from the market and our clients, is going to be more ability to coach a broader range of exercises to drive a combination of strength and hypertrophy over a long period of time and fitting into, like you said, Niki, a lot of different phases of life. The coaches that I see with the longest relationships are those that have a broad enough tool set to go all the way from being a novice where just about everything will work to changing jobs, moving, having kids, buying a house, being injured, wanting to compete, wanting to lose weight, wanting to gain weight.
Or even just post. I've had a lot of clients like post competition.
Yeah.
They do a, USSF meet or what will now be the IBF, and they don't want to go right back into chasing numbers. And so now they're more of an advanced athlete. Well, what do you do with that?
Right.
To keep them making progress. So you have to reset. Okay, well, then what are the goals now? If the goals aren't to chase numbers for the PR, then I need to have the ability as a coach to move you towards fresh goals, new goals.
And what I think is interesting and exciting about it for me is that I think that there is still a core model that, at least for me, it's one of the things I think many of our coaches have evolved to. Instead of reacting to what the big trend is or what the latest paper is or what the evidence-based community is saying this week or next week, is that each coach needs to have their own model for how the body works biomechanically, physiologically, what programming works for different individuals, because it's very dependent on that. But the model needs to continue to be refined. I mean, this goes back to a lecture Sully gave years ago that I just absolutely loved, that helped me think about models as a tool for making decisions, not for being absolutely 100% precisely correct.
Yep.
It's a thing that enables you to make better decisions. And I think that we can still refine our model, our coaching model, our lifting model, but add these additional rays of light onto the object or onto the model that give it more flexibility, more ways of applying it to different scenarios and different goals. And I think with the learning club that you've started, Niki, I'm really excited to see if we can generate that kind of culture or at least drive more of a culture of building out our models to support what you guys have been talking about and what I think we're going to see more from our clients.
Excellent.
All right. Next one is personal goals for life, lifting, and business.
I'll just go quickly here because I just did a podcast 2 Fridays ago where I talked through my New Year's resolutions, and I kind of broke things up from, in different categories: physical and business and even material, spiritual, family. So I won't go through all of those things. And so coming back from Mexico, as you guys know, those trips for me are often, they start the process, whatever that word is, they're kind of initiate getting back really into the swing of things. And so I trained every day while I was in Mexico. I'm excited to continue to train. As a matter of fact, shortly after this call, I'm going to go down to the hotel gym and knock out a good workout. So I like to continue to lose a little more weight, probably get down to like 225, which I think I said, get my waist down around 35 inches. I love tracking macros. I'm going to try to track macros 365 days a year. I know a lot of people hear that and they'd be like, that sounds terrible.
It continues to be an eye opener when you track.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. And then, 90% reduction in alcohol this year is a big goal for me.
Yeah.
And so I've got some of those big physical goals, and certainly we've talked through the business goals. And, for me, the material stuff is more about playing the long game and thinking about setting up my family and grandkids and making sure that the right things are in place, from life insurance and trusts and things like that. So you're just not overexposed there. Spiritual goals, I've talked about, preaching more and taking a more active role in my church, and then have certainly some personal goals for my family and how to interact there. Kaylin is closer and closer to finishing school. She seems convinced that she's going to be engaged in the next year, which is exciting. And, just continuing to build my relationship with my younger daughter, with daddy-daughter dates and date night once a week with Rachel, probably just on a Wednesday night, just go out, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And so some of those things are really important for me on a personal level. And I'm also wired, you guys know I'm wired, that I know I'm not going to perfectly hit all those goals, but I'm also not somebody that when I don't feel like a failure. I like having those general achievable things to work towards because, again, I think it comes back to core values. If you're somebody that if you write it down, like Rachel doesn't want to do this because if she writes it down and she misses it, she feels like a failure and is depressed. And I'm like, oh, I like writing it down to have something to work towards, so that when I get up in the morning and I've got a lot of work to do and I think, man, I really need to get a workout in, but I don't really have time, I can come back in the same way I do to the business and say, well, but wait, this is what I'm working towards this year. And so even if I have to get out to the garage or the gym or the hotel gym and just knock out a 20-minute workout, consistency is the thing for me. Next year, when we do the Blocky Awards, I want to be on the list of completing the most workouts. At least if I'm not number one, I want to be in the top 10. It's because I'm doing nutrition as well.
Right.
I'll knock out a nutrition workout every day. I'm doing some sort of training 6 days a week. And so if I do training 6 days a week and nutrition 7 days a week, then I should be in the top 10. And so that's consistency for me is probably the number one thing across the board.
Cool. I like it. Tough act to follow there.
Man. Okay, my turn. I take a little bit different of an approach than Matt does. I'm kind of less metric oriented and I tend to be more feeling oriented. So one thing that I've started doing that I'm curious to see how it evolves is journaling pretty much every day. Like that's my chance to, it kind of unclogs my thoughts. I was describing this the other day to Andrew, where if you like think of your thoughts as being on a conveyor belt and they'll go towards something. I notice if I don't journal, they just all pile up and they fall off and I forget them. But with journaling, I'm able to just keep them moving. I keep new thoughts rolling in, and then those may turn into something that I shared, turn into something that I enact, or just turns into me enjoying the moment. And so I think that'll be a useful way for me to keep my brain, I was going to use the word functional, but like more useful than maybe just kind of getting stuck on things and ruminating. So journaling is a great activity for me that I want to continue. Also because I really want to look back at the end of the year and read my journal entries from the beginning of the year. I think that would be really cool.
For sure.
So that's an activity that I'm interested in continuing. And training wise, I want to keep mastering the ability to have my body be exactly where I want it to be in a very short amount of time, which means there are some times when I want to be very relaxed and just eat what I want, drink what I want. And I always have I can keep things in a pretty tight, realm there. I don't just eat Doritos all day long or anything like that. But I also want to be able to flip the switch and trim down to be the rockin' body that I want in a pretty short amount of time. And from what I've been researching lately about what happens to women when they go into their 40s and 50s, that just gets harder and harder. So I want to invest in my ability to do that. And I know that comes from having a lot of muscle. So if I can keep my muscle content high, have a limit on how much body fat I have, or at least be able to easily maintain that, then I think that will be a really good life investment moving forward. Because I want to keep maintaining a good relationship, being on the same team with my body is really important.
One thing that's important there is that I think you do really well is you really always have to be within 5% of what that goal is at all times. So, if you weighed 300 pounds and you're I want to be able to look and feel exactly as I want to in a short period of time, well, that's not possible because it's going to take a long time to get there because you're 97% away. But when you're within 5%, then it's not that hard to just flip a switch and make that 5% change. 5% change is easy to make.
Yeah.
A 95% change is a hard change to make.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. I was thinking about that, how it's what you're doing most of the time. That's just a habit and the norm. And then you kind of play outside the boundaries just a little bit, or you work yourself into 100% compliance. So I want to make sure I'm equipped to be able to do that and help others be able to do it, really. And then the last one that I'll speak to is the learning group that we created within our coaching staff. It's called the BLOC Learning Club. And I was actually inspired by Chamath from his Learn With Me group that he leads, where he picks something, anything, and he has a team who helps him research it and learn about it. And then they turn that all into blog posts. And within our team, I thought it would be great if we had some sort of structure of accountability where every 6 weeks we pick a question, pick a topic, learn what we can, figure out how to present it to our team, and then have a week off and then do it again for the next 6 weeks. And the idea with that is incrementally learning about anything. It's more about whatever you're curious about than anything else. I want it to be something that you are intrinsically motivated by. And then put yourself on the line for having a time frame and the responsibility to present, because I do believe it helps you learn when you're able to speak to it. So we just started that. We have our first presentation week coming up in a couple weeks, and I cannot wait to see what I end up getting curious about and what our team gets curious about and what that just does for everything. So learning without feeling like I have to know all of the answers. It's a big one.
I think my theme across all the areas, and this sounds a little cheesy, or at least the words being present and intentional are all over the place and feels a little trite saying that. But if I think about what it is that I'm really focused on, it comes back to those two things. In life, I'm ultimately trying to be less reactive to whatever the situation is that I'm presented with. And, not in the way that I'm trying to like repress my emotions or, I'm not a stoic kind of person, but there are these moments that I've noticed over my life where I have the ability to choose my actions or react without thought. And I'm trying to create these brief pauses in those moments. And then outside of those moments, be more thoughtful about setting up my time so that I'm not trying to do 10 different things with my brain all at the same time. That's been a thing that was maybe a strength at some point in my life where I was able to juggle a lot of different things at the same time. But I've been noticing more recently that whether it's at work, yesterday I just had this really great coaching session where I was able to eliminate all my distractions. And you talk about this all the time, Matt. We've been talking about this for years, doing the Pomodoro. You just experience things totally different when you're able to be totally engaged in that moment. And sometimes going from client to client, there's a lot of friction and I'm just like having to really push myself. But then other times, if I'm able to dedicate that time and clear out distractions, it's just coached for an hour and it felt easy. Ended up coaching more than I wanted to.
You hit the flow state.
Yeah, I got into flow state. Exactly. I knocked out what I thought was going to feel like a lot. And I only had 4 left and I was having a good time. So I just coached the next 4 clients and it was great. And now I'm ahead today. And I want to create more time like that in all aspects of my life. And Mac working with me is with my calendar and using the buy back your time philosophy from Dan Martell has already just in the last week changed how I feel, even when I'm not working, because my work day is structured and planned ahead more thoughtfully. I'm able to be less distracted outside of that time. And same with lifting. There's a lot of times in the last year, several years where I'm working and lifting at the same time. Like I'm still, responding in Slack, responding in Basecamp, texting, watching social media. I just want to do less of that and be more of really into what I'm doing.
Yep.
It is noticeable when someone is present when they're not.
For sure.
Well, we are up on an hour. I think I did a little better this time.
Nice job, MC.
I had one quick fire question. Fashion trend of 2024. Shout out to Tanner Guzzi. Style. Maybe I should be saying style trend of 2024. Quick predictions. Niki?
Well, I know I said the onesies that they were coming out and they are really present now in January. Yeah. Like
they exploded. Yeah. Even in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. I've seen them more and more and more, which I really love. In fact, I want to buy some. The onesies have been pretty big, but I'm curious what's going to happen as the summer comes around. In non-fitness fashion, I see just more and more of like the normal male and female style norms just swapping.
Flipping.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious if that's going to trickle into fitness at all and what that would look like. But yeah, still seeing just a lot of cropped women who work out want to show off what they work out. And I really like that. So I think that's no matter what that looks like, I think that's going to stay the trend. But I do kind of hope that the scrunch butt shorts disappear, even though I am guilty. I have some, but it's just like, it's a lot.
I don't know that I have a good fitness. Part of it is I'm very grateful for Tanner walking me through this. I feel really comfortable with my style right now and kind of, the way I dress, and I feel correct in my clothes and my skin feels more like me. So I like that. I think worldwide, I think we're going to see more of a return to more of kind of traditional, classic things that you could take a picture of in 2024 and it would still look great 20 years from now. It's not like, super, I know like the trad life movement is a big deal. So I'm not talking about dressing like Little House on the Prairie, but just, very feminine dresses for ladies, more standard classic suits and, slacks and tucking in your shirt and, just that kind of, I would love for people to dress more like they did in like the 1920s, 1930s, with obviously a little more of a modern flair, but I love that classic look. As a matter of fact, classic everything, classic architecture, things that I think thinking about playing the long game, like what will look good, in your home and your architecture and your furniture and your style, not just today, but 50 years from now. That's the great thing about the kind of classic look. And so I hope we continue to see a movement that direction.
I think that's optimistic.
Yeah, it probably is.
I think more likely it is time for the early 2000s to come back.
Oh, they're definitely coming back. My daughter's already.
And specifically, the belly button is coming back.
You want the belly button.
We've been dealing with a decade of pants getting increasingly higher.
Well, that's where onesies came from. We were just like, how can I make my pant line even higher? Oh, let me just turn it into my bra and my shirt.
They just put it over their head.
Yeah, 90s has been such a big deal, with my teenage daughters. And now they're like, oh, that's so 90s. We're moving into the early 2000s now. And so like, that's the next female trend. I don't know what that looks like for guys, but hopefully it's not cargo shorts again. So.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because something popped up on my screen the other day. What's interesting now is people born in the 2000s are kind of coming of age into the like hot demographic, the early to mid 20s. So we now have this generation coming in that is referring to in their marketing the 1900s as like the old times.
Like it's the Industrial Revolution.
I knew this day was coming where people would be like, Dad, it's the 20s. That commercial was actually about shorts being too long. Don't wear long shorts. That's not the 1900s anymore.
I would agree.
At least I think we're over with the long shorts.
I hope so. There you go. 2024.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Barbell Logic podcast. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and leave us a 5-star, 4-star review. As many stars as you can. 5-star review.
11 stars. He goes to 11.
11 stars, please.
Friday, Scott Hambrick returns to the podcast. So we have a fun podcast with him coming up on Friday. So look forward to that.
Outstanding. What are you guys talking about?
Do you own a business or a job?
Oh, good one.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.